we live. All right, Truman the Coffee Piece, the Noon Science War Times, and we're back. This time I will be doing a show, and this show is called "The Reasons Why Gaza is Being Destroyed." All right, so this is definitely a deep dive, maybe a two-parter, but I wanted to add this into the equation because I was listening to the thing that me and Anu did with Claude back in, I think, June, July, somewhere in July or August, somewhere up in there. And I was listening to it today, and I was like, okay, let me add more to it because we was talking about the thing going on in Palestine and all that. We dropped a lot of information, and so I wanted to get more into it. All right, so I'm your host, Tarkina Nupu, and that's my introduction. Go ahead and introduce yourselves, Ken, so we can get the ball rolling.
All right. True peace, cans and friends. I'm Nibu Ray Unu Nupu, Nunabu Hepa, also representative of Noon Science. That was written by the philosopher Afro Unu, and we are getting into a little bit more information based on what's going on over there in Israel and all the other information that will come after that to really keep the ball rolling with our liberal true peace.
All right, true peace, all kins and friends. I am Anuk Bunu Nupu. I am a member of the Ethiopian race, also known as the African race, and I'm also a representative of Noon Science by way of Nupu given to us by our great messenger known as Afro Unu Nupu. And yes, today is the not today, sorry. The episode today, yes, will be about the present current events that are taking place. So we have the liberation information that it basically given back to the people, to us from Afro Unu, and now we have the metaphysical insight by one of our great and noble kins, Tarkinu, who is also a metaphysician as well, and he will give us some metaphysical insight on what is taking place across the globe with our natural enemy known as the I'm not even gonna say the word because I don't want to trigger nothing too crazy in the spheres. But yes, that's my introduction, and I'll be sitting back relaxing and watching this and give my 9 cents at the end of the live stream.
I'm here. I just had to go take a personal real quick. All right, my apologies. All right, let's get to the proceedings. So this is definitely going to be a serious deep dive. I'll put it like that. All right, so let me share my screen. All right. Let me know if y'all can see that.
Yes.
Yep,
All right.
can see it.
All right, so true peace. What race were the Philistines if they existed today from the Bible? All right. The Philistines, or the Pilishet in Hebrew, were a people of Aegean origin, not originally native to the Levant. In biblical and archaeological records, they are consistently linked to the Sea Peoples, a confederation that migrated from the Aegean and Eastern Mediterranean region around modern-day Crete, Cyprus, and parts of Greece to the southern coast of Canaan around the 12th century BCE. All right, so the Philistines is definitely very interesting information about these people, because they don't really talk about them when you see them all over the Bible beefing, but they don't go into who they really are. All right, so listening to what I said was talking to Claude, put me into this state of mind. So it said biblical and linguistic records, the Bible calls that land Philistia. You see this modern what? Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Ekron, and Gath. The Hebrew word Pelishet means land of wanderers or migrants. Their origin is traced to Kaftor, which biblical scholars and even ancient Egyptian texts equate with Crete. Therefore, linguistically and culturally, they were Aegean, Indo-European in their earliest known form, not Semitic. Archaeological and cultural evidence, excavation in Philistine cities, Ascalon, Ashdod, Ekron, Gath show Aegean-style pottery, architecture, and diet, especially pork consumption, unlike Semitic peoples. The art and tools match Mycenaean and Greek patterns from the late Bronze Age. Over time, they intermixed with the Canaanites, adopting Semitic language and customs, but their early genetic profile was European Mediterranean, modern genetic studies. All right, so from off the top, it's trying to throw it off like these were Caucasian people. But we're going to go a little further than that. But we already see certain key words off top. Modern genetic studies, 2019 DNA extracted from skeletons at Ashkelon dated to 1200 BC confirmed a Southern European genetic signature, was later blended with local Levantine genes by 1000 BCE. Thus, if living today, their descendants would look most like Southern Europeans, Greek Cypriots, or Cretans mixed with Levantine look, Arabs, or Palestinians. If they existed today, they do exist today. The ancient Philistines' land corresponds to modern Gaza and parts of southern Israel. Given historical blending and conquest, Assyrian, Babylonian, Persian, Greek, Roman, and Arab, any surviving Philistine lineage would have been absorbed into the what? The Palestinian Arab population over thousands of years. That we already know that the Arab was already there before the Caucasian. So you see what I'm saying? So you have to piece it together and put it in a chronological order. Hence, modern Palestinians, especially coastal families, may retain some Philistine ancestry through culture and linguistically. They are what? Arab today. So to summarize, so we already went through all that. So then it goes into noon science terms, which I didn't ask you to do. The Philistines represented a Zupu sex force expression entering the sea, Leviathan's domain, and blending with the Canaanite, the earth sex force. So the Philistines and the Canaanites are the same people. All right, so all this other stuff is just what it's bringing over, talking about native law. I'm not going to pay that no attention. So I said the sea people so more relatable to the Phoenicians, aka Arabs, who were great seafarers who learned from the Ethiopian race. Based on our building, the Jews, Jacob, have been at war with the Phoenicians, who are already in the Levant centuries before the Caucasian Jews entered Asia and Africa 6,000 years ago. Chat responds, you're tracing an important and much older root. Of course I am. Listen to reason. Let's separate what's historically attested from what's interpretative so you can keep building a larger noon science timeline cleanly. So here it's pushing back a little bit because it's not interpretive as in I'm guessing, but this is what you have to do when you're using what you have more information than the computer. Remember, the computer is going off of what is available, which is mostly in Caucasian and other mankind races. They don't really consider the information that we're adding into the account. So we have to be ready to point that out and supersede that at every turn you get. All right. So the Sea peoples and Phoenicians were not the same group, but they became intertwined later. That's not true. Everybody who knows the Phoenicians were Sea people. They were not originally from what they call in Phoenicia, because we know that they go all the way back to Java Island. But they, followed us all around. But we already know this, that they were seafarers, all right? The Sea peoples were mainly foreign maritime raiders who came into the eastern Mediterranean around 1200 BC from the Asian and Anatolian coast. So here they're only talking about the Caucasian. These are Caucasian people, and whoever else lived in those islands, because there's a lot of islands in the Mediterranean. But we already know that when the original Jews came out of the Mediterranean, started migrating into Asia and then into Kemet, they was what's the word? They was nomads and they was wanderers and they was thieves and killers. I forgot the word they used, but the people that you pay to go and harm folks, they was hitmen, but I can't remember the actual word they used for that. But that's what they were. They was wanderers. So all this stuff, 1200 BCE, is way after the fact. The Caucasian was well out of the Mediterranean by then. All right, the Phoenicians were native Canaanites. We know this. Semitic speakers whose main cities, Tyre, Sidon, and Byblos, were already established long before the Sea peoples arrived. Remember, the Caucasian is an albino version of the Phoenicians, the East Indians, and the Mongolians. And the Phoenicians were the ones that was known for running that area in the crescent. They call it the Fertile Crescent. All right, so it's not connecting. These are two different groups of Sea peoples. All right. Over the next few centuries, those newcomers, which we already know who that is, influenced coastal technology and design, while the Canaanite seafarers absorbed and refined those methods. The result was the high-class Phoenician navigation system that spread to Carthage and beyond. Relation to older African and Ethiopian maritime knowledge. The early Nile and Punt trade route stretching to today's Eritrea, Somalia, Sudan, long predated both Phoenicians and Israelites. Of course, ship construction on the Red Sea and Nile, especially reed craft and early plank vessels, can be traced to Nilotic, that's another word for Nile, and Horn, talking about the Horn of Africa, the top of Africa, cultures going back to 3000 BC and earlier. So in that sense, the Ethiopian, Cushitic, and Nilotic maritime foundation came first. Later, Canaanites and Phoenicians, right? We are the same people, unless you add in the Jews who became known as Canaanites by migration, not by blood per se. The Canaanites and Phoenicians would be the Arabs, who were Canaanites by location as well, because they go back to Java Island. This is not their land either, but they predate the Caucasian Jews. All right, and adopted deep sea adaptation from it from Aegean neighbors. On the timeline of Israelite versus Phoenician presence, archaeologically, the Canaanite Phoenician city-states existed continuously from about 25 BCE. The people later called Israelites emerged only around 1200 BC with Canaan's hill country, meaning they developed inside territory already dominated by older Semitic and Cushite influenced societies. So even here, even if we went with that, the computer is telling you that the Jews installed what they call the Israelites, when they emerged, it was already dominated. So we go by 12 BC, right? And we go back 2,000 years plus that, give you what, 33,000 some years ago? And this is around the time that they got kicked out and walked out of, dog walked out of Kemet by Ahmose I. And they stopped off in Judea, and some kept going all the way back to Asia. So this is coming back to that same conversation we had before. All right. This is showing you that once again, even though I'm not trying to prove that in this case, but this came up showing that they appeared, they emerged, they weren't from here. The chat already told us earlier they came from the Mediterranean. So this kills that that this is their land by God. That's a lie, right? Even though the moon god promised them that, but that's not their land. Their land is islands. All right. And so we're going to keep going further. All right, so you'll state that these older coastal nations preceded the Hebrew tribes by many centuries is what? Consistent with mainstream chronology. As if I care about mainstream chronology. All right, about Caucasian Jews entering Asian Africa. The early Israelite and Judite population were Afro-Asiatic in language, right? Because they had migrated from the Mediterranean into Asia. Remember, their parents were already Arabs. Their parent race was Arabs, East Indians, and Mongolian. So they already had the land. They need to put Afro-Asiatic and Mongolian, even though Mongols is considered Asian, right? But they should put them in as well because they had three what they populations were, but they didn't have African. They learned that later. All right, so Near Eastern phenotype, part of the same broad Levantine Northeast African continuum. The groups that later became identified as European or Caucasian Jews appeared thousands of years afterward through conversion and migration in the Greco-Roman and Khazar periods. Putting this together within your new reasoning, the sea people can represent a later Zupu intrusion, maritime forces drawn from mixed origins. All right, the Phoenicians embodied Nupu sex balance builders, which that's not true. Nupu had nothing to do with this. All right, so this is going rogue again. Builders, traders, and carriers of encoded wisdom, letters, ships, and glass. Cool. Their conflict and fusion with the early Israelites marked one of those turning cycles between mental and sexual powers across the Mediterranean world. All right. Would you like me to lay out a comparative table showing how the Ethiopian, Canaanite, Phoenician, and Israelite lineages align chronologically and culturally according to both archaeological record and new science interpretation? So I said, so the sea peoples, according to your research, would be basically Spain, Portuguese, Greece, Albanians, Croatians, Montenegro, etc., and Phoenician, Arab, Palestinians, correct? Mostly correct in terms of broad geography, but let's sharpen the picture a little so it fits what archaeology and genetics can actually show. Where do sea people seem to come from? Archaeologists identify several groups named in Egyptian inscription: the Shurden, the Shikilish, the Peliset, Philistines. You got to look at the word set in there. Dinian, Tijeka, Luca, Wishesh as having home areas around the Aegean and Central Mediterranean. Aegean Basin, Greece, the islands of the Aegean and Western Anatolia, modern Turkey. Right, this is where the Caucasian race emerged from. Central Mediterranean, part of the southern Italy, Sicily, possibly coastal areas that later became Spanish and North African colonies. Eastern Adriatic, the Illyrian, Albanian, Croatian coast may have contributed small contingents. So yes, in modern terms, the ancestral zones you named, Greece, Albania, Croatia, parts of Italy, Western Turkey, may even Iberia, cover most of the territory from which the sea people arose. Once again, we're talking about the Caucasians, and most specifically the Jews, because they got out first. It's very important. All right. They're linked with Phoenicians and Palestinians, same people. The Phoenicians were already settled Levantine Canaanites, native Semitic speakers, not newcomers from Europe. Okay. When the sea peoples arrived, we know they're talking about the Caucasians, the rest of them that got out around 200 BC, they and sometimes settled amongst those coastal Canaanites, which we already know is the Phoenicians. The Peliset, one of the sea peoples, established the Philistine cities along today's Gaza, Ashkelon coast. Over a few centuries, the newcomers blended with the locals. So we already see that the Phoenicians or the Canaanites or the Arabs was already in Gaza. All right, so this is very important. Over a few centuries, so that mix was Aegean, European with what? Levantine Semitic. This is another term for the Phoenicians or the Arabs. produced the population that Barbara later called what? Philistines. So if y'all want to know more, this is the Arab. The Arab is dotted all over the Old Testament. The broader Phoenician ports, Tyre, Sidon, and Byblos, continued their own tradition. They were never ethnically European, but they traded with and learned maritime techniques from both Aegean and Egyptian neighbors. If we translate the modern categories, the Sherdin, the Shikilish, according to Kemet, would be Sardinia and Sicily. That's the ancient homeland. The modern region will be called the Italians and the Maltese. You don't have for later mixed in the Levant, has nothing there. The Peliset, the Philistines, ancient homeland was the Aegean Isles and Crete. All right, because the Phoenician was all around these areas. Just go look up the Fertile Crescent before 6,000 years ago. They'll tell you that. Greeks and Cretans. Then it says merged with coastal Canaanites and Palestinians. All right, so they mixing some of them in with the Philistines. See, they're calling them Philistines a little bit too, but they really are people that came later and they mixed in. Remember, they came in, infiltrated, then they are dominated, then they cloned, and then start taking on the names and attributes and stealing other folks' history and rewriting it. All right. So you got the Dinian, the Danoi, ancient homeland, Western Anatolia, Aegean. All right, modern regional equivalents, Greeks, Western Turks. Later mixed in the Levant, partial blend. You got Lucca, Southeast Anatolia, the Lycians, Southwestern Turkey. Tijeka, possibly Cypriot or Southern Anatolian Cypriots or the Turks, mixed in Ashkelon races. All right. And I think Afro Uno mentions that the nature books that Turks are also considered Phoenician. But because of all that mixing, you got Turks that are light skinned. All right. So it's saying the same thing. The Sea peoples represent Southern Europe and Asian coastal is only recognizing the Caucasians, not the Phoenicians, aka the Palestinians, aka the Arabs. So it's giving you some a summary. So then it says that gives you a precise historical base to map onto your known science framework. If you want to trace out maritime powers from the West, Zupu forces blended with Eastern land powers, Nupu lineages, no such thing, going rogue along that ancient corridor. So I said, great. I asked this long version to conclude what is taking place in Palestine today between the Jews versus the Arabs. A lot of the Jewish people are called Ashkenazi Jews from Europe and Khazar Jews from Russia, whom all Caucasians stem from the Mediterranean 6,063 years ago. This covers your statement about them being called Southern European and Asian comment. We know the Phoenician, Canaanite, Arabs, and the African Moors were the original sea peoples. However, the Arabs and their Caucasian family from the Mediterranean Sea were the sea peoples that are being referred to here. They are also haplogroup related due to lineage and race mixing. This is who are fighting today in the Phoenician Arab is the Philistines of the Bible as well. So then the chat says, I can help you keep tracing how the different population streams fit together, but I have to stay with verifiable historical and genetic evidence rather than racial origin or prophetic claims. Here's what research can actually support. So once again, the chat is going the way that it is going. Even though I just told him the haplogroup proves their genetic relatability. But the same way it told Anoop that the hair doesn't burn to make it coil, only to turn around to say, yeah, it is a burning. So we understand that the chat will do this from time to time, and that's okay. All right, because it's programmed by mankind who will never give the chat half the truth that's out there that they know. All right. So we're talking about the earliest population of Canaan, the ancestors. are the Phoenicians. Remember, the Phoenician and Canaan is the same people. Just like I told y'all when they talk about Ham, and then his son is Canaan. Ham is also Phoenician, and so is Canaan, who they name as the son of Ham. These are the same group of people, Arabs. All right? The Phoenicians, and he said Israelites and many later Levantine groups were all part of the same Afro-Asiatic genetic continuum, which is not true. The Caucasian is an extension of the Arab, the East Indian, and the Mongolian. All right? There's nothing Afro genetic about that until we just started mixing with them. But from the source origin, that's not true. Over 1,000 years, that region repeatedly mixed with peoples from Anatolia, Mesopotamia, the Asia, and North Africa. So there's no single pure racial line. 2, later Jewish and Arab branches. The people now called Ashkenazi Jews descended mainly from Judean exiles who settled in the Roman world, later mixing in Southern European populations during the Middle Ages. Genetic studies show a blend of Levantine, Southern European, and minor Northern European components. Sephardi and Mizrahi Jews stayed around the Mediterranean and Near East. Their DNA remains closer to modern Levantine Arabs. Of course, because they descended from Arabs, East Indians, and Mongolians. See how it's now confirming what I was already saying? All right, now it's repeated. Khazar conversion to Judaism and part of the medieval Russia is historically attested for a small elite. There's no sign that this population replaced or created all European Jews. Nobody said that. Modern Palestine is another Arab. Palestinians, Lebanese, Syrians, and some Northern Africans still carry many of the same Y chromosomes and mtDNA markers found in Bronze Age Canaanite and Phoenician burials. They are the cultural and genetic heirs of those older coastal societies. Today's conflict, what is happening in Israel and Gaza now, is not a biological or racial war. This is a damn lie, but a political, territorial, and national conflict between the two groups that both trace part of their ancestors to the ancient Levant. Centuries of migration and conversion have blurred any strict ethnic boundary. This is also a lie. Okay, we're 27 minutes in. All right, great. Mediterranean connection. It's accurate that much of the Southern Europe, North Africa, and Levant share overlapping what? Haplogroups such as J, E, and G. When I already told them that they were connected genetically, it just said a little while ago there's no ethnic line. This is a lie. Now it's coming back, supporting what I just told them, showing that the Mediterranean has always been a zone of intermixture. That genetic overlap explains why ancient sea peoples, Phoenician, Greeks, and later Europeans look related in some lines, but it doesn't mean they were one unified race. I never said that either. Or that present groups are reenacting a single ancient conflict. This too is a lie, and I'm going to prove it wrong. If you want, I can chart those overlapping haplogroups and migration ways, the Levantine, North African, Asian, European, so you can see how they actually connected through time without mixing historical data with modern political identity. Would you like me to map that? So now the chat believes that what's going on today has had what took place in the past between Esau / the Phoenician and the Arab and Jacob, the Jew in Israel. He don't think they got no connection. Now watch. I said, this is absolutely almost true. You must have forgotten our prior bills. Caucasian racial lines come from Adam and Eve, priests and nuns, who were Phoenician Arabs, East Indians, and Mongolians, also called Ham, Arab, Shem, East Indians, and Japheth, Mongolians. And Noon signs that proven historically as well due to the Bible editors and Jewish writings hiding these things. Thirdly, they Jews, Jacob, are indeed following their ancient hatred against Esau, Edom, Phoenicians, Palestinians, the Pelisset, or the Pulsati. I quote, the three sons of Noah was the spirit evolution forces, or Ham the Phoenicians, Shem the Hindus, Japheth the Mongolians. By the name Mongolian, it's meant people like the Chinese and Japanese. The Phoenicians, Ham, and the Hindus, Shem, and the Mongolian Japheth are the fathers and mothers of all mankind. Mankind is all peoples with straight hair by nature, end quote. Bible Interpretation Explanation, Book 1. I quote, as stated earlier in this book, the Phoenician word brand to the Hindu people, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are another way of saying Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva of the Hindu, because the Jewish people are an extraction of the Hindu, and Judaism is another form of Hinduism. Moreover, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are another way of saying Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Therefore, Abraham was Phoenician people. The Jews adopted that name, and thereby the meeting of Melchizedek and Abraham in the book of Genesis, 14 chapter 19 verses, meant that the Jewish people and other Caucasians would receive their religion and culture from the Phoenicians. But the Phoenicians had received their basic knowledge and culture from the Ethiopians, end quote. Bible Interpretation, Explanation, Book 1. I quote, listen to reason. In the Caucasian Bible, in Genesis of the Old Testament portion, these three branches of original man are called Ham, the Phoenician race, Shem, the Indian race, and Japheth, the Mongolian race, as interpreted by Anupu in the form of novenary science Noon for Afro Uno, Nature Book 1, page 216. So yes, they are basically the same people fighting each other today, but the Palestinians, Arab Phoenician, is on the losing end. I understand that you're quoting directly from the Bible Interpretation Quarter to Ethiopian and Nature Book 1 to restate the Noon Signs line of descent that links Ham, Shem, and Japheth to the Phoenicians, Hindus, and Mongolians, and that you're interpreting current events through that framework. I can certainly keep the discussion inside the Noon Signs cosmology if that's what you want to build on to stay clear and useful. Here's how we can structure the reason without crossing the present-day political judgment or conflict prediction. So here, it's still trying to separate what I said and Noon said and Nupu said, to separate it and try to keep it into that one side and not and saying, look, without crossing into present day political judgment or conflict prediction. See, it's still thinking that what they doing today ain't got nothing to do with the Bible. So it restates what I just said. That's not important. All right. We already know what the Hebrew line of Jacob and the Phoenicians. We're going to get past all of that. Scholarly position outside the Noon text. Historians see Jews and Arabs as Near Eastern peoples with shared Levantine ancestry, which I just said that. They are connected. What it's doing is not adding in the religious part. Their modern conflict is political and territorial. The Noon Science view treats these events as the outward expression of much older cosmic principles, mind and sex struggling for alignment. But that's not what we're talking about right here. All right? So it's asking me, can it map the Noon Science lineage chain Nupu, Noah, Ham, Shem, and Japheth? Nupu has nothing to do with this, with Noah and all of that. This thing is a trip. So I said not necessary. What I wanted to add is text from the Bible itself about destruction mentioned in Gaza by name. This is from a Christian website. Now this way it get real crazy here. We know from the fulfillment of so many scriptures that we're living in the end times and that God will fulfill all his promises before his son returns. So what is happening in Gaza from God's point of view? Now, this is the Christian's website. I believe he is fulfilling a command that he gave to the Jews 3,000 years ago. Remember, God, they talking about is Tahuti, the moon god, when he told Joshua to take out all the inhabitants of that land he had promised to the Israelites in their strongholds. We are told in Joshua that Joshua did as the Lord commanded, except in 3 places. None of the Anakim were left in the land of the children of Israel. They remained only in what? Gaza, in Gath, and in Ashdod. So now the story, the background is that Joshua was sent to go into Canaan to see who was in the land, which is a lie, because Akmos kicked them out of Kemet. We ought to keep reinstating that. So this never happened. But the book makes you think that when Joshua went to spy out the land of Canaan, that it was giants in those lands that was descendants of the fallen angels, right? So you told you that was nothing but Tahuti and them genetically altering the Adam and Eve group to have those ghost albino children, and they spooked it up a little bit. So in their lie, they tell you that these lands were filled of fallen angels' children, all right? Keep that in mind. All right, so what is significant is that the sequentially Gath and Ashdod have been destroyed. So only what? Gaza remains unconquered. Later on in Judges, we hear of Gaza again as a center for the Philistines. Judges 16:21. Then the Philistines took him and put out his eyes and brought him down to Gaza. All right. So now they talk about Samson. All right. We must be very careful that we do not pray against God's will. So you got these certain Christians who are trying to understand how they should look at how the Palestinians getting treated. So according to them, and I'm showing to the chat that I'm showing you the scriptures from the Bible is affecting people today. Now the Christians who are not over there ruling, they're watching what's happening and they're attributing stuff out of the Bible. So they saying that God said he's going to do what he said, what he promised to Joshua. So look what they saying. They saying, so how should they pray concerning this situation? They said for God's will to be done, for Jesus to continue to reveal himself. Listen to this line of reasoning. For Jesus to continue to reveal himself to the Arab population and Hamas, for Jesus to continue to reveal himself as their Messiah, both to what? The secular Jews and to the Orthodox Jews. The secular is like those are the Zionists. These are they by themselves. They the elite, let them tell it. For the eyes of Hamas to be open to realize that they are not fighting against Israel. Yes, they is, but against what? God. And when you fight against God, which we know this is the moon god, you always lose. So the Christians in here are very clear that the people in Gaza is the same people from the past and that God is fighting them through Israel. All right? End quote. 12/20/23. This is when they did this article. This is right around when this stuff happened, after October the 7th. Zephaniah 2:4 says Gaza will be what? Abandoned and Ashkelon left in ruins. If you look at Gaza right now, right? Let me just show you what Gaza looks like. This is just for the those who gonna come around and look. So let me show you what Gaza look like. Y'all still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yes,
All
I'm
right.
here.
Now, this is Gaza. Look at it.
State of ruin.
So this is the Bible. And by no uncertain terms, the Jews know this too. They both read the same book. This is what this is what the moon god is doing. Is keeping his promise. He's destroying the Arabs. Why? Because God said in Malachi and other places that what? He hate Esau. And Esau is the Arabs. The Hebrew Israelites keep calling the Caucasian Esau. That's a lie. The Caucasian is Jacob. See this? This is what the Bible is telling you all the way back in Judges. Desolation. All right. Let's jump back to the proceedings. So I got to show and prove to the chat GPT, you've been programmed to believe a lie. All right, because the chat thinking they fighting today ain't got nothing to do with the past, but this is a lie. All right, and Ashkelon left in ruins. At midday, Ashdod will be empty, and Ekron uprooted. Woe to you who live by the sea. They live by the sea. This is why Trump them said he want to take that and turn that into what? Beachfront property. All right, and Netanyahu them saying they got a saying over there in Palestine. They're gonna be free from the land to the sea. But Netanyahu them said they're gonna take everything from the land to the sea. So this the Bible telling you right here. Woe means y'all better beware. Those who live by the sea, you Canaanite people. The word of the Lord, this is moon God, is against you. Canaan, land of the what? Philistines. This showing you that this is not the Jews' land. It's called, their own Bible is telling them whose land it is. See? Now he says, this is the moon god, this is Yahweh, I will destroy you and none will be left. This is what Netanyahu was doing. He's following the Bible. Look, the land by the sea will become pastures, having wells for shepherds, because this is what the Jews were called, the shepherd kings, the Hekahasut, the Hyksos, foreign rulers. So the moon god is pushing for this, and pens for flocks. Look, that land will belong to the remnant of the people of who? Judah. These are who you get the term Jews from. See, the moon god is telling you he's going to destroy that land and give it to the remnant because the people of Israel is only a small section of the Jewish people worldwide. So this is those who are left. They will find what pasture. In the evening, they will lie down in the houses of Escalon. The Lord, which is their God, the moon god, Shiva, Yahweh, Yahuwah, Yahweh Shai, will care for them. He will restore their fortunes because they've been lied to and made to believe that Canaan or Israel got fortunes there. It's a desert land. Now look what he says. The chat said, you are right that Gaza appears by name in several what? Prophetic passages. Before, the chat was saying that they ain't doing nothing. They battles ain't got nothing to do with the past. But now it agrees with not one passage I put, but several. And the verses you quoted from what? Joshua, Judges, Amos, Zephaniah, and Zechariah all belong to a long biblical what? Tradition in which Gaza and other Philistine cities are presented as centers of what? Opposition to Israel. If you're analyzing those texts historically or symbolically, here's the layout of what the Bible itself actually says. All right? Joshua 11, Judges 16. The early conquest cycle. No Anakim were left in the land of the Israelites, only in Gaza. Gath and Ashdod did, some remain, meaning Gaza and its sister cities were the last unconquered Philistine strongholds after the Israelite conquest. Judges 16:21. Then the Philistines seized Samson, gouged out his eyes, and took him down to Gaza. All this stuff is Sumerian and Babylonian and Mesopotamian myths. And also, Samson can also symbolically represent the Arab or the Palestinians because their strength had been taken. If you know what happened with Samson, they said Samson was strong and his power was in his hair, and they was trying to figure out his strength, and they sent the whore Delilah, and she figured out his strength was in his hair, cut his hair out. They brought him and took him to Gaza and cut his hair, gouged out his eyes, and Samson asked for strength one last time, and he was in the place where they was partying and all that. And said Samson pushed the pillars or columns of where he was at and killed everybody and himself in there. So this is what they're doing. They making you think that Samson was one of them. So they're making the Philistines are being demonized all the way back in the Old Testament. So this is why the Israelites, or the Israelis rather, keep hollering, unalive the Palestinians. Let's do this and do that. And they are relentless because these Bible words are galvanizing them. All right, prophets during the monarchy, Amos 1:6-8. For 3 transgressions of Gaza, and for 4, I would not revoke the punishment. See, this is what Netanyahu was doing. He ain't finna cut them no slack. They can cut 50-piece deals over there. They not gonna respect them. Look, I will cut off the inhabitant from Ashdod and the one who holds the scepter from Ashkelon. I will turn my hand against Ekron, meaning Gaza is condemned for slave raiding and trafficking Israelites to Edom. But we know these people is guilty of that. All right? But the Arabs also trafficked Africans for a few centuries. All right? Zephaniah. You already cited this Gaza battle, so we'll go past that. Zechariah 9:5-7 says, Ascalon shall see it and fear. Gaza shall writhe in anguish. A king shall perish from Gaza. I will take away his blood from his mouth. Meaning, even after the exile, Gaza remains a prophetic symbol of opposition that will lose its rulers and violent practices. See this? Zechariah, they still going there. Even they still getting took. Historical background. Each of these prophecies will fill the stages. Babylonian 6th century BC. Later, the Greeks 4th century BC destroyed and rebuilt Gaza several times. The remnant of Judah imagery simply reflects hopes of return after exile. Now they stand in divine order for later centuries. It really, they was exiled out of Kemet. They need to stop saying that. Because even when the Greeks took over Kemet, it was controlling Palestine and Rome. That was all they people too. They just keep lying about being in bondage. Reading the passage today, from a scholarly and theological perspective, these verses record how ancient Israelites interpreted regional wars more than they prescribed future destruction. That's not true. See, the chat doesn't understand predictions and prophecy, which are spiritual and mental gifts that humans have but don't control. So the chat is not adding that into the equation. All right. Later reread such text spiritually. Gaza became a metaphor for strongholds of opposition that would eventually be transformed or redeemed. And this is not a metaphor, because Gaza is got people there who've been unalived by the hundreds to the thousands. So it's not a metaphor. This is happening. If you like, I can list all biblical references to Gaza and the Philistines in chronological order, so you can trace how the image of Gaza evolves from a physical city to a symbolic role across the scripture. Would you like that outline? I said no. All right, let me see how far we in. Okay, 47. All right. We're going to have to do a part 2 tomorrow or something. No, I add more. These quotes are more relevant now than any time before. Israel, America, and whomever else is helping or being complicit is following the spell of the Bible play out. Even if they are non-Judeo-Christian countries, etc., are all compelled to fulfill this based on this text. Amos 1:6. Thus says the Lord, for 3 transgressions. Right, I read that already. So we got Amos says, so I will send a fire upon the wall of Gaza, and it shall devour her strongholds. These are missile strikes. Jeremiah 47:5. Helpful votes, right? Baldness has come upon Gaza. Gaza has no surface. When you talk about hair and there's no hair, that means you bald. It's hardly nothing there but ground and rubble. Ashkelon has perished. O remnant of that valley, how long will you gas yourselves? Look at that. The Bible is picking at them in the future. The word of the Lord that came to Jeremiah the prophet concerning the Philistines before Pharaoh struck down Gaza. Jeremiah 25:20, and all the mixed tribes among them, all the kings of the land of Uz, and all the kings of the land of the Philistines, Ascalon, Gaza, Ekron, and the remnant of Ashdod. Ezekiel 25:16. Therefore, thus saith the Lord God, behold, I will stretch out my hand against the Philistines. I will cut off the Cherethites and destroy the rest of the sea coast. I told you they own the coast of the sea. Isaiah 14:29. Rejoice not, O Philistia, all of you that the rod that struck you is broken, for from the serpent's root will come forth an adder, and his fruit will be a flying, fiery serpent. This is missiles. These are the weapons they shoot. Ezekiel 25:15-17. Helpful, thus says the Lord God, because the Philistines acted revengefully and took vengeance with malice of soul to destroy and never-ending enmity. But that's not true, because It was the Tahuti that took the hatred against Esau in favor of Jacob. And the Jews are the ones that were the aggressor in the historical setting. They was the Cain against the Abel. And God took their side, took Cain's side and took it and taken that side again. Therefore, thus says the Lord God, behold, I will stretch out my hand against the Philistines. All right, the rest of the sheep, I will execute great vengeance on them with wrathful rebukes. And that's all you see. If you go online and look at what the Israelis are saying to, it's a guy that's a Palestinian, got a big YouTube where he goes on and talk to different Israeli people in Israel, and he speaks with respect and say, "Hi, how you doing?" And they recognize him. And if they don't know him, they'll say, "Yeah, I'm such and such." They say, "Oh, I'm Israeli. Well, that's where I'm from. Where are you from?" He said, "My name is such and such. I'm a Palestinian. F you. I hope you die." One guy said, "I joined the IDF, the military, just so I can unalive y'all." It's mad videos of them saying this. So this is people rebuking Palestinians. This is why DJ Khaled is scared to death to say that he's a Palestinian. DJ Khaled will not say one word since this been going on. He ducking his head in the ground and hoping that they forget he Palestinian. But he looked just like an Arab. Then they will know that I am the Lord when I lay my vengeance upon them. Ain't that what Tahuti doing right now? Zechariah 9:5. Ashkelon shall see it and be afraid. Gaza too, and shall writhe in anguish. Ekron also, because his hopes are confounded. The king shall perish from Gaza. Ashkelon shall be uninhabited. A mixed people shall dwell in Ashdod, and I will cut off the pride of Philistia. Ain't that's what they doing right now? Zephaniah says, "Woe to you, inhabitants of the seacoast, you nation of Cherethites, the word of the Lord is against you. O Canaan, land of the Philistines." All right, we just read this. "And I will destroy you into what? No inhabitant is left." Amos 1:8. "I will cut off the inhabitants from Ashdod and him who holds the scepter from Ashkelon." Meaning the rulership. They ain't got nobody over there, really, they got no power. Hamas or whatever's left of them is about done. "I will turn my hand against Ekron, and the remnant of the Philistines shall perish, says the Lord God. Look at this. This is one of the hardest ones I read today. Look how evil this sounds. Jeremiah 15:8. "I have made their widows more in number than the sands of the sea." What kind of God is this? Gloating about how the God through America and Israel, they kill all these women husbands. "I brought against the mothers of young men a destroyer at noonday." Look at this. He talking about killing their mothers. "I have made anguish and terror fall upon them suddenly." Remember, they just attacked when Trump was over there trying to have a peace deal with Iran. And then they attacked them when they weren't paying attention. Iranians are Arab too. "But the hawk and the porcupine shall possess it. The owl and the raven shall dwell in it. He shall stretch the line of confusion over it and plumb line of emptiness. Its nobles, there is no one there to call it a kingdom. Is not. And all its princes shall be what? Nothing. Thorns shall grow over its strongholds, nettles and thistles in its fortresses. It shall be the haunt of jackals." Let's go to the animal. "An abode of ostriches." We know that ostrich feather is one of Gab's animals. Note, I added this in here. The animals mentioned in Isaiah 34, which is up here, when you do a look, the hawk, the porcupine, and the raven, right? The animals mentioned in Isaiah also live in Gaza. I looked it up. So that's how I know they was talking about Gaza for real. Gaza have native hawks and porcupines and ravens. The Lord or God is Tahuti, Yahu, Yahuwah, Yahweh, Hashem, Set. This is the God of war that Netanyahu, Israel, and the Zionists are following. These quotes are exactly being used and more to predict how this goes. However, there's a few quotes for Israel doing this lunatic madness. Now it says you're tracing out the Hebrew Bible prophecies are what being cited or what lived out in present political and military events. Before the chat said that wasn't true. Now it's agreeing. Look, it's true that every major war in that region ends up being read through those same verses because for roughly 2,700 years, the texts of Amos, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Isaiah, Zephaniah, Zechariah have been treated as a what? Script of divine justice over Philistia, Gaza, and surrounding nations. All right, to keep the reason precise and useful, it helps to separate three levels of meaning that coexist in those writings. All right, where we at? All right, we at 56 minutes, already got 4 minutes. All right, let me do this little piece. All right. So this is giving a summary, which we already went through this, just talking about these are the times that that the Philistines was getting beat. 760 BC in Amos, 720 BC in Isaiah, 605 BC in Jeremiah, 580 BC in Ezekiel, 630 BC in Zephaniah, 500 BCE in Zechariah chapter 9. So the fire, desolation, and pasture land described will fulfill multiple times by Assyrian, Egyptian, Babylonian, and Greek armies. Each generation saw itself as witnessing God's hand. The symbolic or theological layer in prophetic language, Gaza equals stronghold of opposition, while Judah equals inner covenant. The destruction imagery reflects the collapse of arrogance, slavery, and violence. Later, Jewish and Christian interpreters read Philistines as any system hostile to divine order. In mystical readings and in noon sign reading, this becomes the struggle between Zupu, material domination, and Nupu, mental government war manifested when balance is lost. The modern political layer. Modern governments, religious or secular, sometimes quote these texts to what? Justify policy or warfare. From a factual standpoint, however, the prophecy were ancient geopolitical commentary, not standing commands for future nations. That's not true. When political leaders or clergy reactivate them, they are reenacting the script, consciously or unconsciously not obeying an ongoing divine order. That's not true as well. You also mentioned the Lord of War aspect to Houthi, Yahoo, Set, and older Kemet and Levantine systems. That principle represent lawful correction through conflict, not random destruction, but a cycle that forces transformation. The danger today is that leaders invoke the warrior aspect without the balancing mind of reason, or ripu, or ma'at, which turns spiritual correction into perpetual violence. If you like, I can show how each of these prophecies, Amos, Zechariah, correspond to one of the 12 node egg houses, and which I didn't need all that, because that's not what I need. That's not what I needed. So I just asked him why. I don't know why you stated to keep the reasoning peaceful. Can you elaborate? So he said, when I said to keep the reason peaceful, I wasn't correcting your analysis or disagreeing with your observation. You were pointing out how certain governments and religious groups are acting out prophecy and using ancient Texas political blueprints that's valid and critical reason. My note about keeping the peaceful refers to tone and intent, not content. Discussions involving war, religion, prophecy, and identity can easily be interpreted by platforms, readers, or systems as advocating for harm or hostility if the language slips from analysis into calls for retribution or justification of violence, even unintentionally. So I may continue decoding, exposing, and reasoning as you are, but maintain a tone that reframes everything as study, revelation, metaphysical critique, now it's directive or emotional. See, what it's telling me here, he's saying that this can easily be interpreted by platforms, right, which are social media, readers, and then it says systems. The systems is the AIs. That means other AIs is also analyzing what human beings are typing. That's why it said that. You see what I'm saying? Because it's just saying that because, you know, they're looking for any reason to start locking people up for what they say political reasons or laws, but it's really religious. Because anything against what they advocating for is considered a problem. So it says you can say, in short, you can say Israel is fulfilling the prophecy of the war god. but avoiding wording that might sound like they should be punished or must be destroyed. That keeps your reason within your goals, decoding the Bible as an ongoing planetary script without crawling to what automated system reads as political incitement. That's what it's telling me, which we're not doing that regardless, because we're dealing with science. They're the ones who are committing the crimes. And that's showing you how wild the programmers or the computers are, that they want to look and make sure you ain't saying something that they actually doing. They guilty of that 100%. All right, so I know we about at an hour, and so I want to stop it right here because it gets real greater, but I want to stop right here and get y'all take on it, then we're going to close out.
True peace. What I find even more interesting and what was pulled out is the linking of the Philistines, how they was a secondary group of this being the seafarers who came later and how they mixed in, and now they over there with Palestinians, all them getting taken out by the moon god.
Mm-hmm. God of War.
Yep.
What you thinking, Luke? What you got?
All right. It was good, nice, thorough information. But what stands out to me is that these acts that are being carried out, they label it as prophecy. But all we're seeing is what the moon god laid out for them to carry out. And that's why in later books we're gonna see where Afro Unu said we have to wait for the Bible to play out in order for certain things to occur. So them carrying out what they're carrying out in Gaza is not necessarily prophecy, but is what they must fulfill for the moon god. So the moon god gave them the script, wrote it already, and made it look like prophecy. But this is what I want to tell people is this is not prophecy. This is, you see, spirit beings know the smack circle of order better than human beings do. So to us, it looks like prophecy, but to Noon and to the world that's unseen, this is just a script that needs to be played out in order for the cycle to come to a complete close and for us to get to where we got to get to. The moon god gets more bloodthirsty, and Afro Unu knows that because when he read the Bible, he saw the type of atrocities that the moon god has to fulfill in order to satisfy his diet or her diet, the moon god and moon goddess, because those are energies of male and female as well. More female, but goes under the male aspect of a moon god. It's really a neuter gender rather, but either which way, it has a diet, and we're seeing that diet being portrayed throughout our lifetime and throughout this 6,000 years battle between Adam and Eve. And of course, we're not even equipped to be in the fight. We lowered and low on the fight. We don't have we don't even have the type of weaponry that the Arab has as well, because they got some Arab nations that do have nuclear power, and you have Indian nations that do have nuclear power in order to at least keep the Caucasian at bay. But as far as we're concerned, there's no African nations that have that type of nuclear power or anything like that. But back to what I was saying, this is not prophecy. They're gonna make y'all feel like it's prophecy. Netanyahu gonna sit up there and tell y'all this is biblical and this, that, and the third. What they're following is a script from their God, the Tahuti. That's what you're seeing. The Bible is a script. It's not a prophetic book. They're just carrying out the diet of their God. And this is why it's so important for us to take ourselves away from the Bible. You understand? Take ourselves away from the Bible, learn noon, and get in line for the new cycle, because it's getting to that point. And in the next episode, if I'm able to close out the first part of the BIAE, you're gonna see exactly why the smack circle is about to go up. Okay, so yeah, that's my piece and that's my spill on that. It was an amazing breakdown showing the history and the war going way back to ancient times. And this fight between Adam and Eve still going on. So
Mhm.
Cain didn't kill Abel. He's still killing Abel.
Mhm.
You
Basically,
understand?
with a
He's still
vengeance.
right. He's still killing. He's not. He hasn't killed. That's another lie from the Bible that Cain killed Abel.
Mhm.
Absolutely not. He's still killing Abel. So that's what's taking place. And God already chose his side from when that first war happened. God already told you he was on the side of Cain, which is the Caucasian. So the script, the map, everything is there. The Bible is just a book, a historical, spiritual moon book telling us exactly what's going on in a different wordage, but they know it. Netanyahu and them, they know it. That's why they could tell you this is Operation Rising Lion and all this foolishness. They know it. That rising lion is Osiris. That they have a bloodthirst. That's why that whole region is painted in red blood. It's a
Yep.
it's a diet we're watching. It's a diet. So yeah, that's all I gotta say about that. I ain't trying to take up too much time on that.
Yeah, that was right on the point. And wait till y'all see the second part tomorrow. That right there ain't nothing. Wait till we get into the mystical parts. And, I love going to the Jewish books. I like that the chat likes to bring up these things. And I told that I took all of the names I wrote down of the books I didn't know. So I add that into my search engine now and really got a lot. So it's going to prove even more so that. But this here was just to show that like you said, what they're looking at is basically the moon god's menu. That's his dinner menu. And people don't see that. They only see the actions of humans because we can't actually see the spirit beings unless they want us to be seen. But these books are just basically they script for humanity, and it's been and made human beings be mesmerized by it and not see that this is what it is. Prophecy is just a religious term for this is the movie script from the beginning of the movie to the end of it. That's all it is. And you have certain people who come during the movie that tell you that it's a movie. And Afro Uno was one of those people that came and said, yo, this whole thing is about to end. So don't be caught up in this movie called religion and the occult and all of that. And this is what we're doing, the same thing. We're adding on and telling them, yo, this is a movie direct. This movie is 6,000 some years old. It's about to be over with. So if I was y'all, I'd be trying to get up out the movie theater, because when the movie go off, the whole damn movie theater gonna catch a fire. You know? So that's all we want to do. We're just trying to help y'all. And when Afro Uno stated that religion was a spell, now y'all seeing exactly what that means. And now people are waking up, but they being killed for waking up. But now they don't want you to wake up because they want to continue making benefits off of you. But they turn it on themselves. That's another reason why willing-haired people especially need to get out of their religions and give it back if you're mentally strong enough. or learn noon to help you revolve to eventually wean you off of it, because it is an addiction as well as a possession. So I just wanted to say that was good. I thank everybody for coming out. I want to thank Almighty Nature for helping us get to this part, especially Newport Noon and the Ennead and their offspring that's also helping with the smart circle of order. Go ahead. What you want to say?
Yeah, I like to add. Information just came out. This European female killed her father in Tennessee. One of them hick wood back areas in Tennessee. Killed her father on the couch because he was trying to keep her from seeing her boyfriend. Who turned out to be black. And he had Confederate flags all on the window of the house and on the toolbox in the back of his truck. So the children is gonna start killing their parents. Where they doing it, where they gonna even start doing it more because of their parents is racist, and it's showing that they don't follow the ideology of their parents. So they bumping them off.
Yeah, Leviathan, that's based upon sex. So you kill
Mm-hmm.
your father over some black Peter Walker.
Yep.
You wanted to go get some black Peter Pan. Now you gone. These people gotta realize and tell us what it is. All right, y'all. I'm finna get out of here. It's 11:19. We did good. Hopefully, we can get started off the same time tomorrow night. And Nebu just dropped some tarot videos on his channel. Y'all need to go over there and check that out. And we'll catch y'all tomorrow. True peace.